Hi everybody, this is Lou Adler. Glad to see you here. I kind of like to do these spontaneous webcasts. Spontaneous in the sense that I just advertise them via tweeting or LinkedIn connections or put them in a post, as opposed to having them formal on our website and prepare them for a couple, 3 weeks. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of insight for one of the blog posts I did on LinkedIn. A couple of them. One of them had to do with drive and motivation. But then I want to kind of give you that a little bit of an overview, and then what I'll do is answer some of these questions. So JJ will be monitoring the questions. I know they come in fast and furious. And this actually happened yesterday. What I would say is the N factor. And it's the first time I've ever said it in a public. Actually, JJ doesn't even know what I'm going to talk about. And I thought about it last night driving home from a workshop we gave, and I said, I think there's more to motivation and drive that meets the eye. What does it really mean? Is it universal? How do you measure it? How do you use it? How do you apply it? And I think even that question, I think it's Sarah that said the question, what professional development ideas do you have? In fact, I know Louis D. asked the question. I think it all has to do with this N factor. So let me kind of get into the basic theme of performance-based hiring, and I'll make it interactive, so maybe I'll be talking 10 or 15 minutes and the rest will be answering questions, but even in that 10 or 15 minutes we can take some questions. So I want to kind of give the setup to what I'm going to talk about, and then we'll get into the details of it. So let me kind of do that first and you'll get where I'm going. The book is, I'd love you to buy the book. You don't have to do it, but I spent a long time writing that book and I really put a lot of stuff into it, and it's relatively inexpensive, less than $10, so it's lunch at McDonald's, but I'll love you to get it and love you to write reviews in it, good or bad. Obviously, the better preferred, but you got to be frank, and I'm totally open to that. Let's get into this, some of the content of the book and the concepts that I truly believe in. The one thing I believe in, and you don't have to read much about what I do to believe in this, is I hate job descriptions. A lot of the questions that you guys have if you're a job seeker is, how do I get a job? I don't have the experience. If you're a hiring manager, I want people with experience. If you're a recruiter, people who have experience aren't all that good. So I never use job descriptions. My background is, as you can tell from the picture, I'm pretty old. I've been in the recruiting industry for 30 years, and I worked in industry 10 years prior to that. And I had a real unusual background. I got an engineering background, manufacturing background, finance and accounting background. So when I became a recruiter, and I did it really because I just didn't like work. I was doing very well. I didn't like working 100 hours a week. And my wife and family said, Dad and Lou, get out of this. You can't do it for the rest of your life. So when I became a recruiter and I had some instance of success, and the success was I didn't use job descriptions. I didn't need to, because every job I filled was, I knew what the work was. So I said, hey, I remember the first plant manager, let's walk out in the factory and we'll see what you got going. And I saw a lot of people get promoted who I work with, and none of the people got promoted ever had the skills. That was the whole point. You get promoted because you're good. So the idea of skills, duties, and responsibilities make no sense. You can have all of that. Let's be real frank. Whether you're a job seeker or hiring manager or recruiter, you can have all of that stuff and not be very good. And you can have a partial mix of it and be superb. And if you have all of it, you're not even going to be interested in taking a lateral transfer. So the idea of using a job description never made sense to me because it didn't predict success, and it excluded a lot of good people here who are hungry for jobs who have no experience. And I know you guys are good at stuff. Just what stuff is it? So I want to kind of get into that, is how do you reframe the job? And you got to understand, the way I reframe the job is I ask hiring managers, what does this person need to do to be considered successful? Tell me what they're going to do. If they were here and you're giving this person a performance review, what would they have accomplished? You say, yeah, this person's going to get the big bonus or the big review or the big promotion. What would they do? So if you're a recruiter asking a hiring manager, you should say, hey, I'm not going to use the job description. What do these people need to do? If you're a candidate being interviewed, you should, rather than sit there and let the recruiter or somebody go through what skills you got, say, hey, what do I need to do in this job? Now, I'm going to get the answer is you got to tell somebody what you've done that's reasonably close to that, but it doesn't have to be identical. But you as a recruiter, you as a candidate, or you as a hiring manager shouldn't even think of using job descriptions. Define success as a sequence of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 things, because of that person needs to do to be considered successful. Because what the issue is if you can prove the person can do the work, or even something similar, doesn't have to be identical, but similar, I guarantee they have the exact right level of skills. If you've managed a big team and a big budget and a complex project, you can manage a reasonably good-sized team and doing a different project if the stuff is reasonably similar. And this idea of identical makes no sense. Number one, it's boring if you've done it. There's no challenge, and people want to kind of grow a little bit. So my idea is a performance-based job description, which I call a performance profile. That is the driver. That determines what skills you need. Skills don't determine if you'll be successful. It's 100% guarantee. If you can do that work, I guarantee you get the right skills. Guarantee it. But having all the exact skills, you might or might not be able to do the work, and you might not be motivated to do it because you've done it before. So I just want to set the stage there, and this is a fundamental principle I believe for 40 years. It's not even believe, I know it's true. That's what you do with what you have that makes you successful, not what you have. And the N factor is what drives a person to do that work. What drives the person? It's not the skills they have. There's something else that drives the person. And it's certainly about motivation. Why do you do this work? Why do you go the extra mile? Why do you stay late sometimes? Is it because you get this character, personal commitment? So figuring out what you do with what you have is the key, but why do you do it? And now you've got to, if you're a hiring manager or a recruiter interviewing someone, you got to figure out what's driving this person. What are the circumstances that drive this person to excel? You, the candidate, have to start figure out how do I sell that to somebody in some way. Let me just set the stage right there is what you do with what you have that counts. The concept behind it is I've been a recruiter a long time, but I also ran a manufacturing company, 300 people, and I was 30 years old, so I hired lots and lots of people. As a recruiter, though, my idea is let's conduct a pre-hire performance review. Let's define success 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, and define all that stuff that the person needs to do. And during the interview, you guys don't see the slides advancing, JJ?
I still see only the first slide, the N factor.
Wow, I moved along way fast. Is everyone else only seeing that? What was the thing I was supposed to do? There was something I can do to correct that, but I've definitely moved on. I'm moving to the third slide. So let me kind of, is there a way to reset these slides, JJ? Or I know on the...
Only within your system is all I know, Lou.
Okay, so let me just see what happens here. Maybe I know what I'll do. Let me kind of go back. So can somebody else just tell me of what they're seeing, so we can?
Yeah, now we're seeing the waiting room, Lou. So
you're seeing the waiting. Okay. Well, how would you possibly see the waiting room?
Sorry, folks. Ain't technology grand? There we go. Now we're on the performance.
Never happened before. Okay, so let me kind of just go through what I just said here, at least in pictures. I'm glad you guys saw that note, JJ. These kind of job descriptions, skills-based job descriptions, I don't like. I like having the manager define the actual work. That drives success. Having the work, which is 5 or 6 things, build a team, grow sales, upgrade the accounting process, learn a new system, put together a project with a bunch of folks. That's stuff that people do. Having 5 years of experience or 3 years of this or 1 year of that to me is secondary. If you can do that work, I guarantee you have the skills. But just because you have the skills doesn't mean you're motivated and can do the work. So this is the point I was making. It's what you do with what you have that counts. And why do you do it is I call the N factor. Why do you do it? Clearly that you do it is important, but why do you do it and can we replicate those circumstances? So JJ, people can see this stuff, right?
Yep, we're...
All right, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the concept. I like to conduct a pre-hire performance review when I take an assignment is, hey, what does this person need to do to be successful? You as a candidate, if you're interviewing, you should kind of, but I guarantee most people you interview, whether it's a recruiter or a hiring manager, they don't really know. They just go off the skills because it's simple. It's not necessarily smart, but it's easy. Let's just, we'll figure it out. So recruiters aren't 100% sure what the manager's looking for. The manager's not 100% sure. Then you get 3 or 4 people interviewing the same candidate. They all have different perspectives of the job. So the fact that you got a job, yeah, feel proud. But guys, the fact that you don't get a job, don't feel badly. It's in some way, it's a lottery. It's not necessarily, people didn't assess you 100% properly. So I know you can get depressed when you don't get the job, and you can feel badly, but don't take it as personal as you should. It's because the system is screwed up. So you got to figure out, how do I play in this game, this system that's screwed up? And that's, I got to tell you, my book is called The Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired. And in it, I go through what managers and recruiters should do. But I also have all this advice for candidates as to, I guarantee these people aren't going to do that. So what do you do to weave around all that stuff to get it? So if you're a parent, or you know someone's a job seeker, buy it. It's cheap. It's $9.95. I mean, it isn't this deal breaker. It's only an ebook. But the idea is that, and I struggle with this. I've been doing this for 40 years, guys, so that's not a piece of cake. I finally got this #1 lawyer in the country to agree that defining the work in terms of performance is far better than defining the work in terms of skills. They're both objective. This is a legal process, but institutionally, people still do this, even though they know it doesn't make sense. But every job really has 6 to 8 tasks. You, as a recruiter, hiring manager, job seeker, have to figure it out. If you get 3 or 4 right, you're in pretty good shape. And they're action-oriented. They all start with a verb: action verb, build, do, create, upgrade, maintain. It's stuff you do. It's not have. It's doing. And that's why I tell man, I'm not going to go through the details of how you convert the job description to a performance-based job description, but the idea is, let's focus on what people need to do. And then from a hiring manager interviewer standpoint, the idea is, let's hire people who are competent and motivated to do this work. Not just skilled enough to do it, but competent and motivated. And when you start looking at it that way, it just broadens the pool to so many more people. I mean, I'm a returning military vet who's managed 100 people in logistics, saying moving materials off a ship into Iraq or Afghanistan and coordinating all that stuff, can run a giant project. If they can do that, they've been thrown in over their head, they never did it before, and they pull it, they can do it. And to think that you got to have 3 years of distribution, APIC certificate, it's a bunch of hokum. But managers want to take it easy, and recruiters are kind of, they are subservient to these managers. They're afraid to fight the battle of what they know is right. I had 45 recruiters in a room yesterday who went through it. And it's the idea of, you got it, and that's almost the end factor. Taking drive, taking this, pushing the envelope where you know things are wrong. I'll stop. Let me, and it is totally legal. So any questions, JJ, about this? I mean, I know there's questions about some other stuff, but I want to just lay the stage here for understanding the role that job seekers, recruiters, hiring managers have. It's getting everybody on the same page of what really needs to be done. And if you're not on the same page, a misjudgment, a misassessment, somebody will do something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of questions from job seekers about that job description. First of all, how can you get your resume seen even? Because so many of them aren't even seen if they don't have the required minimum number of years of experience on the job description.
Well, actually, that's not 100% true. That appears to be true. I actually just read a blog post, which I didn't really think about, but I was one of the comments that I did on a post I did on LinkedIn. And I know it's true, I just wasn't thinking about it at the time. The guy said, and it was somebody, the job seeker, could be on the call, I'm not positive who the name was because I don't recall that. But he said he peppered some more skills into his resume, throughout his resume, that he had related, but in his resume he only put exactly what he had and he was really comfortable with. But then he threw in some other words. He said, I also worked on this project and used, I'm just going to say some HTML5 and Ruby, and he wasn't an expert in that. He said, I was on a Scrum project. He just threw in these words. Exactly the same resume, but just threw in, he didn't mislead him, he just threw those words in there as part of what he had heard or saw, and he got interviewed. So recognize that the way you are seen is your resume is reviewed by an automatic resume reader, pulls out the right kind of words, the job description, which is based on skills, maps to that, and if you've got 80% of those words, you'll be seen. You'll get to the top of the list. It's mechanical. I mean, is it right? Who cares if it's right? It gets you to the top of the list. And when you get to the top of the list, now all of a sudden they'll start looking at your resume and say, this person's pretty cool, this person's pretty cool. So you got to define in the words itself. First, you got to have the resume read. And that's one way to get the resume read. I would just try it. I can't define it. I thought that was pretty interesting. And knowing how resumes are filtered, I know that to be the case. I tend not to, when I post a job, I don't say do not. I say do not send me a resume. Send me a half-page write-up of your biggest accomplishment, and if it's pretty relevant, I'll give you a buzz. I mean, so I have a different approach. I don't even like, but nonetheless, that's the way it is. Let's take one more question on this topic, and then we'll open it up for everything, JJ.
One more question, taking that one step further. If you do get an interview, but the person you're recruiting or that you are interviewing with is still stuck on the old job description format, how do you convince them as a job seeker that you can do the job even if you don't necessarily have all that stuff in your resume?
Excellent question. I would say that's actually the core of the book. That's the core for the job seeker part. The book is written for everybody in hiring. Here's what I tell my candidates. I don't do any recruiting now, so please, guys, and I would love to help you, but don't send me a resume. I'm not a recruiter anymore. I don't do it. I train companies, and I do train companies on how to do it right. But even though companies don't do it right, even though I train them, that doesn't mean they always do it right. But this is the way I used to prep my candidates. And in the book, there's a whole chapter on getting ready for the interview. And it's really almost to ask this question. You have to be such a good interviewer about yourself. You have to be totally prepared. How do you prepare yourself? How do you get your skills out? How do you present all this stuff? You have to be so good at it and prep so much, because when you actually get in the interview, it's not about answering the questions. It's about being so aware of the circumstances that you can control the process so that the interviewer asks you the right questions. So if you're in there in the interview itself, and 3 or 4 minutes later you feel they're just box-checking skills, you just would say, excuse me, when you have a chance. I said, I read your job description, and it was a little bit unclear, and I also read your website that you were planning on opening up a whole new product line in this area. Does this job relate at all to some of those new projects? Because if it does, I'd really like to understand what are some of the real challenges and some of the real tasks or activities involved in doing that. So the idea is, if you see the person emphasizing the wrong stuff, you've got to diplomatically, but with some logic, certainly you have to be confident enough to do it, but you have to be aware of doing why you're asking the question. But the essence of the question is, can you tell me a little bit about what the real job requirements are, some of the challenges, some of the problems you want this person to address? That will enable me to kind of at least give you some examples of work that I've done that's most related. The best way to do that is to be fully 100% prepared, understand your strengths, your weaknesses, have your stories prepared, how you're going to answer the questions, and practice those, and then overlay that with an assessment of the company itself. You've read the job description, you've gone on LinkedIn, you've seen the name of the hiring manager whom you're going to interview, everyone else you're going to interview, you've read the profile of the recruiter on LinkedIn, so you have all this knowledge, a little bit of knowledge about the person, the people, and the company, and somewhat of the industry. And I say, okay, if you're a player there, you've done some homework here, which is part of the N factor, guys. And I'm going to say the N factor is, if you really want to, it has to do with initiative and drive. It's how do you assess why people do it, but neither here nor there. To me, that's the way you would go about doing it. Let me kind of go on here, and we'll take some more questions. I just want to kind of set the stage here. If you're a job seeker and you haven't been in industry too long, you probably haven't heard the term competency models. If you have been in industry, you are familiar with it, and your company might even have one, or if you've been with a company that had one, you know what it is. Companies try to be very sophisticated and say, we know how to hire people, and they have PhDs and OD people, and they go around and they build what's called a competency model. What traits do we need in our company in order for our company to be successful? So if you're a job seeker, you might want to just read the term competency model so you have a sense of it, because that's supposedly what they're trying to evaluate when you're in the interview. I've been around a lot of years. I've probably looked at 100, 150 competency models, and Microsoft has got 64 competencies. Pepsi has, I don't know, they might change it. They got 7 competencies. I went to another company just the other day, had 14 competencies, but it was too many to measure, and it went down to 6 competencies. Lohminger, which is a company that builds its competency models, has got their standard 50 competency models, and nobody uses them. They're kind of cumbersome. Having been around so many years and I've tracked people's careers, I mean, I've placed people who were 22, 23 out of accounting, and they became CFOs and VP finances in 10 years. Well, if you do that for engineers and accountants and marketing people and salespeople, and you watch their careers and you track them, and you place people as managers, directors, and VPs in general, and you start figuring out all the competencies are the same. And there's really 4 big buckets of competencies. It's talent, which is the ability to do the work, your skills and potential and capabilities. It's stuff that just your raw talent or what you know. Your ability to organize and get stuff done, which I call management, which most people don't even look at. It's getting stuff done every day. I got to get this project done. I got to collaborate. I got to communicate. I got to execute it. Delivering the goods. Organizing, planning, doing, whether it's self-management or managing a team, it's managing stuff and getting stuff done. There's a lot of emphasis on team. That's critical. Team is being able to persuade, influence, coach others, be coached, communicate, and it's the whole stuff, anything related to working, collaborating with a group. And when I look at 64 competencies, they all come into one of these 3 buckets, or 4th bucket is thinking skills. Being able to look at information and make a decision. Some people agonize over it, some people don't agonize. And is that breadth of the decision broad over the whole spectrum of the universe, or is it very narrow, very technically and focused? Is it strategic? Is it tactical? Is it just accounting-oriented, engineering-oriented, marketing, or is it, hey, you're looking at the whole business? So thinking skills, they all relate to that. And when companies do their assessment, they're always thinking about what's their competency model? What's the job need, and do you fit the competency model? But the reality of it is these competencies aren't universal. They have to do with what I call the situation themselves. They're dependent on the situation. Do you want to do this work? I mean, just give you a sense, guys, I was a pretty good engineer when I graduated. There was things I liked to do and there's things I didn't like to do. I didn't like to actually design. I hated to design product. I could do it. I hated it. But figuring out some complex mathematical equation that would figure it out, I like to do that. So when I got jobs where I was designing stuff, I left at 4:42. When they gave me projects that were over my head that really had advanced math and stuff you had to think about, boy, I loved it. I was working on, literally, rockets, the Minuteman missile, my first job. And I loved parts of it, and some parts of it I hated. Manager, so the job itself, you got to like to do this work. Now, obviously, if you have an economic need to get the job, that's something different. But once the economic need is fulfilled, then it becomes a higher Maslowian priority for you. Another big one is the manager. I would tell you that's probably the biggest one of them all. Throughout my career, I had some great managers I worked for. I am not a great manager, as JJ would say. That's why we work 600 miles apart. But I'm tolerable if she doesn't see me. But I left industry. I mean, most of the people I work for were great managers. I literally left industry. I hated my boss. He was the group president. I was running the division. He came in every Thursday, and I just hated Thursday. I hated Wednesday afternoon. Oh, he's coming in tomorrow. I hated it. The other 4 days a week I liked. That day I didn't like. The Thursdays I left industry because I hated my manager. Then you got the culture. And the culture is the rate of change. I don't like working at big companies. I like working with small companies that are pretty loosey-goosey. So once a company gets, but everybody's got their own issues. Obviously, if you're an entry-level kind of person, you don't even know. Right now, you go in over your head. You kind of after a while, you figure out what you like and what you don't like. Nonetheless, those situational factors, the job itself, the manager, and the company culture are critical. That collectively drives motivation. I used to say motivation squared, but it's really motivation. And N is, how motivated are you? What are the circumstances that drive your motivation? You can be perfectly talented, but if you don't want to work because you don't like the manager, you don't like the job itself, the culture isn't right, you're not getting the right tools, well, N is going to drop. On the other hand, there's circumstances where you just go the extra mile because you just love the work. Well, if I can duplicate that as an interviewer, I say, this is the person who is highly motivated to do this kind of work in these circumstances. And to figure out N is critical. You got to figure it out for yourself. Obviously, if you need a job, it doesn't matter. You're going to work your butt off regardless of circumstances. But once that economic need is fulfilled, what else is going to keep you motivated? Generally speaking, the manager is a critical part of it. When if manager demotivates you, it's hard to go in. I mean, I used to go 100 hours a week, and this guy would come in on Thursdays and he'd say some stupid stuff. I literally quit 4 times in a year. I said, I can't deal with this. It's a bunch. And then the chairman of the company called me, Lou, come on, please, come back. We'll take care of it and all this stuff. But after a while, I just said, he was just a demotivator. When he wasn't there, N was cubed. I could do anything. When he was there, it was -1. And everyone else would get aggravated. So that N factor, to me, is really the secret of success. Motivation is it, but what determines motivation? So I have this formula, the formula for hiring success, and you can just see it. It's actually the formula. Basically, it says talent plus management plus team plus thinking, those competencies in relationship to the job, in relationship to the manager, times cultural fit, times motivation squared. Motivation squared meaning if the fit works. No, the top line are the core competencies, but the situational fit factors are essential. And I did a workshop yesterday. I do them all the time, but we did one this morning too, but I wasn't there. But I asked, why do good people underperform? When you really think about it, measuring your competency, your ability to do the work is relatively easy. Are you going to be successful, whether you're, let's assume it from the interviewer standpoint, as a function of the situational fit factors? And that's what causes N. I mean, most people just interview in the top line. They don't emphasize the bottom line. So if you're in a situation as a candidate, a job seeker, where you have multiple opportunities, you should be evaluating the situational fit factors, not the money. Money is, who cares? I mean, that's not a fair statement. Obviously, if someone pays you X and someone else pays you half X, it counts. But if someone pays you X and someone else pays you 0.9X, it shouldn't matter. The situational fit factors matter. If you motivate, you'll go to 2X pretty quickly in terms of your compensation. Sorry for the basic 9th grade algebra, but it seems to work. Probably won't the next time I say this stuff. JJ, let's go open this up again. I want to kind of go through the one-question interview quickly, and then we'll open it up again. But what are some questions we got here right now? And they can be
definitely
across the board.
Definitely. We got some questions about actually cultural fit from both the hiring manager side and the candidate side. How do you assess cultural fit in the interview? Skills are easy to determine, but how do you get a cultural fit both from a hiring manager and candidate side?
Okay, so here's what we do, and it's in our hiring manager training class and in our recruiter training. Well, I guess it's the hiring manager because it's the full interview program. When you really look at what cultural fit is, and you look at the variables that determine it, what seems to me is the primary driver is the rate of change of the organization. You have organizations that are slow, bureaucratic, heavy systems, heavy organizational structure, and things just kind of move at a very ponderous level. At the other end of the extreme, you have these startups that are rapid, they're loosey-goosey, they screw stuff up, they invent how to invoice almost every day, but real loosey-goosey. The ponderous organizations are trying to always move to a situation of more flexibility, a little faster decision-making, and change. So you've got where the company is from a rate of change and degree of sophistication, and is it over-structured versus loosey-goosey startup? Are they growing? Where are they in the life cycle of the corporation curves? To me, that seems to be the dominant focus of culture. And you've got to live with that. Now, it's also what direction are they going? You've got a bureaucratic company that's getting more bureaucratic, or do they want to really break down the barriers to communication and go, that's the rate of change they're growing and which direction they're going, and the same with a startup. You've got a startup that's not making any money and struggling, gets pretty negative environment over it. So I would say the rate of change, the direction of change, and is it a healthy situation or unhealthy? To me, those are the drivers of company culture. So let me just leave it from a pure cultural standpoint. If anybody has a question of how do you assess it from a managerial standpoint, we can get into that. But let me just define culture that way. Want to take another one there, JJ?
We have a lot of questions about the interview itself, so I'm not sure if you want to
Well,
pose
ask me
or wait
a few, and
until
I'll
after.
see if they're relevant, and then if not, we can move on. So.
Okay. Do you see differences in this approach if you're interviewing blue and green collar workers in that kind of environment versus this process hiring white collar workers?
What's a green collar worker? I have no clue with that one. I know blue and I know white, and I know entry level. I know a project, but boy, I never heard green collar.
I'm guessing it has to do with the green recycling energy type.
Well, I have to have that person respond. Let me say this. Let me kind of go to the interview itself, and we'll open it up again. So the answer in my mind is no, there shouldn't be. the fact that there is, well, let me say, if you're in a union environment, that's probably a little bit different because you do have contract restrictions. So whether I like them or not, immaterial. The fact is you have them, and you have to, and even in government contracting work, the government is paying you X dollars per hour for someone with a level of skills, which is 6 years of this and a degree in here and this and that. Whether I like that or not is immaterial. It's contractually required, so you got to do it. So let's assume that there's not a specific union or government contract as how you're getting paid. Then I have my universal question, which is applicable to high school students. We've helped fast food chains hire high school students. We've helped the YMCA hire 16-year-old camp counselors using the same question. We've helped fast-growing startups ask the same question. We've helped Fortune 100 companies hire executives using the question. And the question is, and I did put a blog post on it, which shocked me, quite frankly, that over 500,000 people read this blog post on LinkedIn, and of the couple thousand that wrote, 95% liked it. The ones who didn't like it really didn't understand it, so I can appreciate that. But the question is, in fact, let me do the question. I'll ask everyone this question, and I'll do it quickly, though, so you can just experience it personally. I'll conduct. How many people we got? We got 90 people on this call, JJ. Yeah, we'll interview everybody. I think we can do that. Not that stretch. Here's my most significant question, and it's the question, if you're a candidate, you have to answer it, and if you're an interviewer, you should ask it to the candidate. But if you're the candidate and you don't get asked this question, you got to figure out how to get the interviewer to ask the question. So let me go through the question. We'll kind of figure out the different circumstances of people involved and where they play on this game and see how to get it out. But my all-purpose question, if I was interviewing each one of you, and I don't care if you are, let's assume you're in college and done some work, or even if you're, it doesn't matter, or business, I would just, well, here's, if I was hiring you for a specific job, let me give you the form of the question. Then I'll modify the question based on who you are, and then we'll figure it out. So I'll ask it a couple different ways so we pick up everybody here. If I was hiring you for a specific position, and I had built a performance profile, and I was doing the phone screen, so let's assume I'm trying to launch a new product line of widgets or something, I'd say, hey, one of our big projects is we just got this huge order for widgets internationally. We've got to we got to expand our factory situation. We got to do this in 6 months. Tell me where you've really had anything related to that kind of a project. That's all I would ask. I'd tell you a little bit about what it was and tell me about something you've accomplished. Alternatively, if I didn't have a specific job, and this is the one that you might, so for this role play anyway, but I'm going to ask you a bunch of follow-up questions for this. I would say, hey, just tell me about your most significant career accomplishment to date. So let's assume I was going to interview each of you for 15 minutes. Hey, what's the biggest thing you've ever done? Biggest thing you've ever done. We're going to spend 15 minutes talking about it. So let's use that for this role play. Think about something you've done that you're pretty proud of, that you feel, hey, this is the best thing I've ever done. The best thing you've ever done. Now, if you're a little younger, I might modify the question. Tell me about where you went the extra mile, any project you've worked on, a project you've got some recognition for. Tell me about something you've done that you're personally proud of. Might not, well, probably still a big project, and it could be church project, school project, social project where you just decided to go do something. And you got a pat in the back, you went the extra mile, something you're proud of. So think about something you'd like to talk about for 15 minutes, because that's really the setup to the question. So you might want to just think in your mind. So I'm going to go through a series of follow-up questions to clarify what you're deciding upon. So you might want to actually think about that project in your own mind. The actual fact-finding that I'm going to do is in that blog post, so I would urge you to think about how you would answer it rather than write down the questions. So let's assume we're sitting in a room and I say, hey, tell me about your biggest accomplishment. And you spend a minute telling me about it, generally speaking. If you talk too long, I'm going to cut you off. But let's assume. What was it like when you first took on the project? Just tell me what the circumstances were when you got it. When did it actually happen? I get the dates when it actually happened. What actually changed? Give me the big 2 or 3 big changes as a result of you doing this work. What was different as a result of it? Why did you even get this project? Did you volunteer for it? And if you volunteered, why? Or did somebody assign you to it? And if they assigned to you, why'd you do it? What were the circumstances you even getting it? What were the 2 or 3 biggest challenges you faced that you felt really you thought were going to be difficult when you first took it on? How'd you resolve those? How'd you go through those? Let's just kind of walk through that. I said, what was the environment like, the circumstances? Environment, what was your manager like? You like your manager, not like your manager? What was the culture of the company? What was that? Is it fast-paced, slow-paced? Did you have all the tools you needed? How did you do the reporting? How professional is it? Give me some sense of the actual environment, and what was your relationship with your boss? You like them, not like them? How'd you learn? I mean, really trying to understand some of the background circumstances. What kind of skills did you have to use on this job? Did you learn those skills, or did you already have them? And how'd you apply them? And was there anything you really felt that your technology, your skills really were useful in doing it? I'd really like to understand that. And it is very dialogue oriented, just like this is how I asked the question. Where'd you go the extra mile? Where'd you take some initiative? Give me a couple of examples of where you really dug in, even if it was tough. You said, "No, you're committed. You're going to make this pull. You're going to pull this through." Where did that happen? Walk me through some of that. What was the biggest success? You go, the biggest success of maybe your most part, just buttons were popping off. What was your biggest failure? You just shrink up and, oh God, I screwed that up. How'd you learn from that? We're just having a dialogue here. I assume you organized this project. How'd you organize? Walk me through how you organized and planned it. Who was on the team, by the way? What was your role on the team? How'd you get? Did you meet the plan? And was there any time when the plan was going off where you really had to figure out how to recover? What was the single biggest problem you faced? Single biggest problem. How'd you resolve it? What was the single biggest decision? Walk me through how you made it. What did you consider? What were the trade-offs? Was it the right decision in retrospect? If you could do this all over again and start over and do it more efficiently, how would you do it? How'd you grow as a person as a result of this? Was it so significant you actually changed your approach, or you had some real self-development behind it? What'd you like most about it? What'd you like least? How'd you do it? How'd you go through the stuff you didn't like to do? We're really close to the end, and I'm just you're about to close. Hey, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you telling me that. So wait, one last question. This is a pretty significant project in your mind. What did others think about it? Did you get any formal recognition? How do you feel about that? Was that recognition appropriate given the work you did? Okay, great. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. That, to me, is the most important question. It usually takes 15 minutes. When I ask it as a recruiter, an interviewer, I usually go through the candidate's work history. I pull some of these accomplishments out of them reviewing your resume, or the candidate's resume. I look for areas that I would consider you're an achiever, meaning rapid promotions, being assigned bigger projects. I'm looking for, hey, is this person in his or her peer group clearly in the top half or the top quartile of the peer group? I said, okay, I got a person now. Tell me about all this in that. Tell me about the big thing you did in your work history. That gives me a lot of insight about a person. With that question, though, I don't know if it's, I guess we could. Why don't you just, what would I learn about a person or you as a result of that question? You might just want to put it in the chat area or the Q&A area. So just write in chat, what do you think an interviewer would learn about that question? About you as a person. Part of this is the setup. Because you should be in a position to answer that question for all your strengths and your best work. So JJ, is anything coming in on what people are saying? I can't.
Just starting to come in. Self-motivated. How much management supervision they would need.
You keep on going. You can write it down. You know what I mean? Generally speaking, I asked this yesterday, so it's kind of silly to probably do it this way. It's not a tool designed for instant feedback. We had everybody in the class. We interviewed about 40 people. They had to go around the room and say what they learned. Motivation, technical competency, environments and where they succeed, what they perceive to be significant, tenacity, team skills, a whole host of things, which is pretty remarkable for just one question. And since it's the best work you've ever done, I now have put you on a plateau. Your best work you've done is managed a team of 8 people launching a product. Well, if I got 50 people and a budget 3 times bigger, you're going to be a bit too light. I remember talking with one person who I interviewed, and this is probably 5 years ago, and I told him about a job I had and did that. I said, I like your background, but you're just too light for this. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, this job is this budget, this team, this industry, and the biggest thing you've done is, in terms of, the industry is different, it's half the scope. He said, oh, I misunderstood. The biggest thing I did is I set up a whole nuclear power plant. I thought you wanted in this industry. And then he told me about taking on this huge project. I mean, it wasn't nuclear, it was some electrical plant, huge project that was behind schedule 6 months, had 3,000 people in the construction. I mean, it was just, they said, oh my God, unbelievable. The guy was just, now you're 100% right. I blew that. You answered the wrong question. The guy was remarkable. I don't exactly know what happened. He probably did go out for an interview. I don't know the guy was remarkable once I forced him to do it. But the issue is it's pretty remarkable. The biggest failure is important. But if your biggest success isn't comparable to what I need, who cares about your biggest failure? I mean, I know a lot, but what about your biggest failure? Yeah, that's an important question, but I don't know. You got to be in the game before I need to worry about that. And there's other issues. We don't obviously have time to go into every aspect of interviewing. Thing is, I don't like the problem here when I interview, and we train my company trains our company, JJ is part of it. We train managers around the world. I can have 10 managers, 20 managers, 100 managers. So I was in a group in the Midwest, big manufacturing company in the Midwest. We had the whole senior management team, 100 people there, and I asked, how many of you think you're good interviewers? And they all raised their hand, which I said doesn't surprise me. I said, now, when you're all interviewing the same candidate, how many of you generally always agree? Nobody raised their hand. What's happened? All be good and never agree. I just let it sit there. I said, well, today we're going to show you how to agree. And they did. They now implement this company. Now we're training all their managers around the whole world. We're training all their plant managers, every single person. The idea is you got to ask stuff that's relevant, not stuff that every manager thinks is clever. And so many people have their favorite questions. Number one, they're not predictive. Number two, they're just clever. They don't tell you anything. There's no statistical validation behind it. This is statistically valid. It's also very legal. And everyone should ask that question. And I guarantee if everyone asks the same question, even if they ask it slightly differently, when they come together at the end of the day, they'll say, yeah, I agree with you. The person is good, the person's not good. Let me kind of just say this part, and then we can open it up to questions for the rest of the time. What I do is not only ask that question once, I ask it for a series of accomplishments over time. So I start seeing this trend of performance. And during the question, I ask a lot about what motivated you to do that. What were the circumstances behind the motivation? So when you start asking, I'm starting to see the answer. What motivates you? What demotivates you? What are the circumstances as a candidate? So I ask the question, then I ask the questions for team accomplishments as well as individual accomplishments. So I really understand who is on the team. Are your teams growing? Where are you, are you motivated to be internal? Are you motivated to be external? Are you motivated to work with people? Are you motivated to work on technical? So I'm trying to figure out, hey, I'm looking at this trend line of performance, and where do you apply your motivation? Is N half, 1, squared? Where do you apply it? Internally, externally, technically? Is it across a very technical, or is it across the whole function? Do you really take on big challenges? That's part of it. I'm going to see, I talk to you as a person, hey, where have you really gone the extra mile? Where have you really pushed? When you talk about you for your N, hey, if you're finding a job, well, don't just apply. Change the rules somehow. Call the VP marketing of the company, call the president of the company, and tell them you want an interview. To me, that's what the heck. That's how bold you are. So maybe N is it's how much drive, how much initiative you have, how much are you willing to change. I'll give you a couple ideas of candidates who I've seen in my blog posts where I've kind of given them some ideas. But within the projects you've had, who have you convinced? Whether the boss, whether they peers, whether they subordinates. Have you ever gone to the VP of a different functions? I need $200,000 to do this because I think it's right. Well, that's pretty bold. And working hard because somebody told you to do it is fine. But working hard on stuff you, hey, this is not right. I'm going to change the rules here. I don't like this. Is a waste of time. I got to tell you guys, I became a vice president when I was 30 years old. And it wasn't because and I did work hard. It's also because I told her we were going to sell a company. I said, no, give me $2 million. I want to turn that company around. Had to go to the chairman. Chairman happened to be Henry Kissinger's brother, Walter Kissinger. Gave me the money. Turned it around. I had this one boss who didn't think it was good enough, but everyone else did, so that was the guy that bugged me, but neither here nor there. He's got to, so when I start looking at where people take the initiative, where they're bold, where they decide to fight conventional wisdom, are they really pushing the envelope? Are you guys pushing your envelope if you're looking for a job? And when you're interviewing candidates, you look for people who really push the envelope. Well, that's what I'm looking for when I do. You take risks or you play it safe. What were the circumstances behind it that drove it? Could be a boss. I had some tremendous bosses. It was really helpful. It also helped me become a recruiter, too, because I knew what I was looking for. So let's kind of open it up, JJ, then we'll kind of summarize it with some other ideas. But thoughts and comments, guys. And I've never done it this way because I haven't driven the end factor as much, but I was trying to come up with something I knew would be valuable for job seekers, hiring managers, recruiters, and the concept of focusing on performance, getting rid of skills, and looking for what causes people to go the extra mile, and then suggest to job seekers, if you're really hungry, don't follow the rules, guys. You got to break the rules. You got to be legitimate. You can't be dumb, but pushing the envelope, there's nothing wrong with that. I'll give you a couple ideas there. So JJ, any thoughts or questions so far?
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions, actually. What advice do you have for job seekers who have to deal with recruiters who are not familiar with the industry that they're hiring for?
Oh, God. Yeah, I tell you, you can't deal with them. But I tell you, they're gatekeepers. They're just box checkers. Hiring managers don't like them either, but they're hired. I got to be real frank. I talk to hiring managers around the world. Biggest problem hiring managers have with recruiters, they don't know the job. So I told the hiring managers, well, why would you let a recruiter screen on skills when you want to define performance? Well, that's what we always do it. Well, stop doing it that way. I told recruiters, why would you possibly take an assignment when you don't know the work because you're not very credible with a candidate? So that's the circus that happens. So now what would you do around it? I guess, and this was somebody who was a marketing, and I don't know the circumstances. If somebody seemed to be from South America, his English was perfect, but I knew his name was, and it seemed like there was some, he was from South America. He said, I just graduated, master's degree in marketing, can't get noticed. So I just said, I'll tell you, I wouldn't go to a recruiter. I would find the hiring manager, the VP marketing of the company. And this is an email. I went back and forth. So he hasn't responded, so I don't know if it worked, but he said he would take the challenge up. I said, if you're really good at marketing, why don't you put together look at the company, look at their product lines, kind of read the job description and see what it was. You're doing some kind of market analysis. Well, let's be real frank. Market analysis starts with doing some kind of competitive analysis. So why don't you put a competitive analysis chart of the company's 3 biggest competitors or 5 biggest competitors and do a competitive benefit, a cost-benefit analysis of what you can find. And then put it together in a little Prezi chart and then send that to the VP marketing. And if it's any good, and send it to a couple other people in marketing, if it's any good, you'll probably get an interview. You're not going to get all, but you got to do something different. Demonstrate what you're really capable of doing. Now he liked the idea, and that was like 2-3 weeks ago. I have not heard. I said, and I told him, tell me what you're going to do. There's another woman, and she might be on this call, who said, well, I'm a great graphic designer, but nobody's seen me because I got too much experience. If you're a great graphic designer, I don't need to see your resume. Send me some of your graphic designs. I said, I don't really care because I'm not doing that. But if you're really good, I mean, just show me. Show the person who wants to see them. If they're good, they're good. If they're not good, you're not going to get it. I mean, the reality is that do something that demonstrates that you're capable, not just follow the rules. And lots of recruiters just now. So again, here's why I say it. I would say most recruiters don't know the job. So therefore, and why would you apply? I mean, here's one way to apply is to see skills. But the reality of it is, we actually discussed this yesterday. I'm doing a big program with LinkedIn on Tuesday. I think it's only for third-party recruiters, so I don't know. You got to find them. I don't know what the deals are. About the power of a vouched referral. And if you're a recruiter, what's gold for filling a position is a trusted coworker who knows the person. They absolutely know, I know this person. He or she is great. Well, I'll call that the power of a referral. It's just unbelievable. Just 10 times more productive to get that kind of referral. The least effective candidate is one who just applied based on skills, because there's nobody who knows the person. When you think about a known vouched person from a coworker, that's why employee referrals are so valuable. Even better than that is an internal person who you've worked with for 2 years. Oh, I know. I work with Jenny Warner. I just see your name there, Jenny. I work with Jenny. She's great. Let's promote her. Well, she's never been in this. Yeah, who cares? She hasn't been a lot of stuff, but she always gets the job done. And that's what happens internally when you get promoted. So when you know someone real well, that's gold, the internal promotion, high predictability, high performance. A vouched person from someone whom you know is pretty good. Someone you don't know at all, is pretty hard. So the idea, if I had to just say, obviously if you need a job this week or next week, it's not going to work, but I would say as a long-term business strategy is become a networker. Find people you know, stay in touch with them, work with them, because a year or two from now, that's how you'll be getting most of your jobs. And I think when you look at why people get hired most quickly and why they get promoted is because they're performers. And to me, so now that doesn't mean the entry point isn't going to start there, but the entry point is you got to, hey, how do I demonstrate my performance? Well, do something different. You see a job, you see a design or an engineering. I mean, Google, when they start advertising, they put that website on Highway 101 in San Jose, Silicon Valley, said something about, it was a website, it was the prime number of epsilon to the nth power. I think that's not exactly what it was, but it was something like that. And you went, that created a number, .com, you went to that .com, and that had a series of other clever questions that got you in. Well, reverse it. Show your stuff somehow and get it to the person who would appreciate it. Sorry, JJ, I got on a tangent there. Not a tangent, but I just went a little too long.
That's okay. Lots and lots of questions still.
We'll go extra long. We don't have to cut it off at 11:30.
Perfect. A lot of companies, especially if they're hiring for upper-level positions, are going more to the psychometric profiling and interviewing. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, two thoughts. When I place people, we used to give them psychometric testing, but it was only the final candidates. It's a good predictor because I'm a pretty good interviewer, but I'm a better interviewer in the morning and not so good in the afternoon. I just get tired. As simple as that sounds, interviewers are still human. So the testing actually is a good insurance program. However, I don't think it's not that predictive. It's a confirming indicator, not a predictive indicator. And the issue is, from an interviewing standpoint, if I interview someone, now Gallup has probably the most extensive psychometric testing, and turns out that, I don't know all the details, but we work with a couple of clients at Gallup. It turns out all my candidates who had met our terms of what I call the achiever pattern is, we got 90% accuracy on the Gallup, versus most recruiters only have 40 or 50%. So when I look at it, when there's a difference, it's usually because somebody screwed up the interview, and that's when I look at it, or maybe the person, maybe the psychometric is predictive that they want. So the short answer is I actually do it, but I believe it's a confirming indicator and should be done after. For the small group, it shouldn't be a selector. Unfortunately, testers, people who are doing high volume testing, make money by doing it before. So one of whether it's true or not, it's probably about 60% predictive, but it's not more than that. So as a result of it, you're going through this screen, and it's not all that effective in my mind. But nonetheless, people do it, and there's nothing you can do about it because testers are in it to sell as many tests as they want. But most people who are OD people who really understand the truth recognize that it's a good confirming indicator. It's not a great predictive indicator. But that's the way it is. So that's why I would kind of, internally, we had one company, one client who looked at all the people that got promoted, and they were going to use a psychometric tester, and it turned out that they were 50-50 right. If they went through the psychometric test, half the people who they promoted who were all-stars wouldn't have got promoted. They decided not to use the test as a result.
Okay.
Keep on going, JJ.
Yeah, question about panel interviews. Panel interviews are challenging, especially when the executives or when the people interviewing have different visions. So do you have any suggestions about which one to focus on when goals and agendas seem to contradict?
Yeah, yes, I do. We actually advocate a panel interview, but it's very structured. I do like panel interviews. I don't like it. Well, I do like them all the time. I don't want to intimidate the candidate, so it's probably not best to do it first. But a well-structured panel interview is actually very effective. Unfortunately, most panel interviews are not well-structured. Everyone has their pet questions, and they ask them, and they throw them, and they never get, and it's kind of like playing dodgeball. And you don't get anything. A well-structured interview, even the question I ask everybody, is I would say there should be one lead interviewer asking the basic questions, and everyone else could ask the follow-up. So all those 20 follow-up questions I asked, well, have panel interviews ask the follow-up questions, one lead interviewer. The lead interviewer can also be a fact finder, but the fact finders aren't lead interviewers. So there has to be some kind of organization and control behind it. And the beauty of that is in a panel interview, a well-structured panel interview, you actually learn a lot. Oh, I forgot to ask that. Oh, Dave asked that. Oh, good question, Dave. Oh, Sherry, yeah, I didn't even think about that. And I've been in panel interviews where I remember it's probably 6 months or so ago, somebody said, Lou, we haven't gotten any technical questions or any team questions. Do you mind if we get into that? And I said, oh, yeah, you're right. And it was just, you kind of get into the situation, you just kind of forget what's going on sometimes. So a good panel interview that's structured, that knows where they're going, we actually have a scorecard. And if once you conduct the interview and fill in the scorecard, you kind of, we screwed up that, we didn't ask this question. So once the panel practices a couple of times, they really get it. So I would actually say I like it, number one, for one reason, everybody's kept honest. Their emotions aren't as impactful. And the impact person at the end of the interview, not the beginning of the interview, when they're not seduced by it. So it takes a little, they're more objective if they're well controlled and if they're focused and structured. To me, it's remarkably far more accurate and more reasonable, but it does have to be organized.
Great. You were talking earlier about motivation and situational fit. So what if you have a very physical job, like landscaping? Do you suggest diving into the physical aspects of the job to try and judge capability and motivation during the interview, or is there a better way to judge that so they don't bail on you after they realize how physical the job really is?
I think it's excellent question. In fact, Enterprise Rental, they had a program where they interview lots of bright kids out of college and put them into a rental office. And the number one reason why people underperform is it's a very physical job. You're on your feet all day. They may have some pretty cool, and they have good selection procedures, but the performance falls apart. So yeah, if you've got a physical job, it's got to be, part of the performance profile should say is you're working 8 hours a day in the field, in a call center, which is not a physical job, but in a call center, the best people are productive for the first 6 hours of the 8-hour shift. But if you're only productive, even though you're perfectly competent, but you lose track, you don't have the endurance to hang in there in a structured environment, you're going to be underperform. So yes, I think the physical aspects have to be taken into account. The way I would do it is by asking, hey, tell me about where you've really been in a situation where you really had to, whether it's endure or work in a structured environment or work outdoors in a constant level. I would want to see if the person has a pattern of being able to do that and finds the motivating factor, that part of it. Because if, and they don't have to love it, but if they've never shown motivation in that environment, even doing something else, it would cause concern to me.
Okay.
So I think it's very important.
Great. Now, would you?
Let me kind of go through this, and we'll open it up. Let me just kind of end it. For some
absolutely.
people, I did say it was an hour, but I'll hang on a few more minutes.
You bet.
So we'll open up. We have Q&A here. Let me just kind of summarize what we talked about today. Again, guys, I'd love you to buy the book. Obviously, it's all I can say, and I'd love to get some reviews there. I work very, very hard at it, and we're going to start a formal program. And it really is a good book. I think it's a great book, but that's obviously I'm somewhat biased. And it's Bud URL. Just type Bud URL /EGFH Essential Guide for Hiring 1. And you just look at it. Just look at the description. You'll see if you want it or not. I'm going to break the bank here. But the idea that I fundamentally, from a hiring standpoint, is focus on what people do now that they have. It just opens a pool. So because I believe that traditional job descriptions are both anti-talent and anti-diversity. They perpetuate sameness, and they don't improve the breadth of the company, the quality of the company, the diversity of the company, and to me, they're talent limiting. So I think they're dumb. Whether you're a recruiter or a candidate, I mean, I would, if I was a recruiter, I mean, the